my thing, my streaming thing wasn't live, so I'll
Oh,
have to
that's
see
okay.
what happens on my YouTube portion of it. So
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, it's not showing up.
Well, so there's something going on with my API. Like I don't know what
Oh,
you probably know what that is. Like
yeah.
I couldn't explain it to anybody, but for whatever reason, this program that I'm using, right, it says that YouTube's API is not responding.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, we'll just have to
So
shoot with the
uh,
Facebook link. That's okay.
yeah, well, that's okay. I mean,
No worries.
uh, yeah. Hopefully, I'm hopefully everybody on YouTube's joining. I'll see if I can fix it, get it figured out here. But I just went live within it, and it says end stream. So
Oh, there it
hopefully,
is. It
okay,
popped up.
okay.
We're good. Hey, we're here. We promise we're here.
Yeah, hey, yeah. For some reason, technical difficulties on the YouTube channel. What you've missed, you can find on Facebook. No, real quick, what you missed is Matt and I were talking about most impressive things for the first 2 weeks. The 2B by county, 13-1 combined record. The Trico League, something similar, but 5 teams, 2-0, led by Seton Catholic, La Center, Castle Rock, Kalama. Did I say that? Kingsway Christian, and then single most impressive wins so far this season: Sumner over Lake Stevens, and Tumwater over Puyallup 56-6. And then my other one was Life Christian over Napavine 35-28. So James is in the live stream comment section and says, "Oh, now you're on." I'm glad that he typed, "I guess they're not going to be on tonight," because then it was like, "Oh, wait a second." So we've been on. Sorry. If you want to jump over to Facebook, James, to see what you missed, definitely can do that. I know you're following on Facebook as well, but we did get started a little bit ago, and for whatever reason, it wasn't working. So, all right, cool. So, Matt, we just talked a little bit about Skyview Graham Kapowson. You mentioned Skyview coming back down 14, 17, nothing in that game at one point. Yeah. That's one of those games to where you could look at it both in two different ways in my mind. Yes, Skyview came back and won the game. Gutsy performance, gutsy as hell. You got to give them all the credit for not giving up and coming back and winning the game. On the other hand, Graham Kapowson kind of had the game won, had the interception. All they really had to do was just go down, and then you've got 4 downs to work with and run some clock, and maybe you kill the clock, kill the game right then and there. Unfortunately, a fumble occurs, and yeah. So, I mean, I'm not gonna take credit away from Skyview, because I also think that the win that they had against the team Radford from Hawaii, who was playing their third game, right, when Skyview's playing their first game, late kickoff, hot day. It was 95 degrees down here that day. You got to give Skyview a ton of credit. They're sitting here at 2-0 now, and you look at Graham Kapowson, and I sit here and I say to myself, this is an 0-2 team that does not worry me. At this point in the season, I do not feel panic at all. If I'm Graham Kapowson, if you look at who they've played so far to start the year, they were tied late with O'Day. Strip sack touchdown ends that game. They end up losing. Shout out to my boy David Schwarzel. I don't really think that Skyview is a team that should be overlooked in any capacity. I think that they are going to be a contender all the way down, but there's 2 things to this. Number one, they're probably going to run into a team from South Puget Sound again at some point when it comes time to the round of 16, round of 32, however we shake it out. They've met the round of 32 lately. They had a deep run last year, but this is a good learning opportunity for Graham Kapowson as well. I think that they're going to learn a lot from that game. And I think that other teams in that league are going to kind of dissect that film. And we're going to see it's up to one of those 2 teams to make some adjustments if they do come up and meet each other again. The other thing with Skyview is that they still have Camas to go through. They still got Battleground to go through. I mentioned Battleground as a dark horse. That was one dark horse that I'm actually looking somewhat correct on. The other ones I won't talk about. But they have a Camas problem. I think they've lost 14 in a row to Camas, and I don't know if they've beat them ever in program history. I might have to go back and double check that. But that's the only thing that causes me reservations about them, is because Camas is still really, really good. We'll talk about where I have them in my rankings. A lot of people think very highly of Camas at this point. So I did have Skyview, though, as one of my surprising teams.
Yeah, and Skyview has they've got to go through Camas, got to go through Battleground. They also have that very intriguing game, I think week 6 against Richland over there at Kiggins. Richland's been on a hot streak to start the season. They haven't given up a point yet, but they're more backloaded on their schedule this year. But that's been a fun team to watch. They're not on my surprise list just because of the opponents they played, but
Sure.
They're looking really good.
Yeah, no, I did take a look at them, and I believe their quarterback has 8 touchdown passes, 9. Okay, yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. I did see who they've been beating, and that's the problem. I mean, if there's a problem, right? That's the only problem is that MCC. You're going to have some really strong teams at the top, and then you're going to have some fairly weak teams near the bottom. No offense there to Hanford or Southridge. I know that Evans household doesn't want to be grouped in with that. Southridge is just a couple years removed from having a really good team, though. So they're not. Yeah,
they've got a good rushing attack this year. We'll see. They got Richland this week. We'll be there on Saturday. We'll see how that one goes.
Again, fans, we are back on YouTube, so feel free to type into the direct YouTube chat there, and we'll get to your questions, comments, concerns, complaints, if you agree, disagree. Matt, I'm going to jump over to you real quick here and just kind of tell me another team somewhere. It doesn't have to be 4A. It could be wherever you want, but somewhere near the top of your list is a team that surprised you so far.
So I actually went through and I have at least one from each classification. There's a couple I have 2. I'm going to start in the 4A and go work my way down. So the 2 teams that I put as my most surprising undefeated teams right now, I put down Stadium. I thought that Stadium, the computer had them ranked really, really high preseason, but I was kind of skeptical about that one. But they looked pretty good. They got a couple of good wins. Washington had a pretty solid program last couple of years, and it's good win there for Stadium. South Kitsap was the other one I have on there. South Kitsap has scored 115 points in their first 2 weeks. I think they've only given up 6. Or they haven't given up 6. Somebody else, but they've scored over 100 points the first 2 weeks. That program it's been a while since they've been relevant, and I hope that maybe this could be the turn to now that they're split in the SPSL. Maybe now they're going to have an opportunity to build some momentum and maybe pick off a few wins and kind of take a step into another tier.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams that are definitely under the radar, I would say, for most that have started out a couple times with 2-0. So I do like that. If we're going to stick in 4A, I'm not totally surprised that they're 2-0. And we've already talked a little bit about them, but it's Sumner at 2-0. Beating Lake Stevens was very impressive, but coming back and beating Auburn Riverside 48-0, a game that you could easily kind of overlook a little bit after such a big win against Lake Stevens. I mean, they come in and they absolutely leave no doubt in my mind that they're amongst the most impressive teams. I did have something else written down here. I gotta find it, but where is it? Here it is. The entire 4A Wesco. So that's the league that's got Lake Stevens in it, correct? Yeah. So 4A Wesco, 4 teams are 2-0, and none of those 4 teams are Lake Stevens. So if you go and you look at that league there, scrolling up to it right now, but you've got Arlington sitting at 2-0. You got Glacier Peak sitting at 2-0. Jackson and Kamiak, super surprising to see them at 2-0. These are a couple programs that have been struggling, we'll say the least, over the last couple of seasons. Nice to see them get some wins. This kind of ties into my reasons why I'm not so concerned about Lake Stevens, obviously being at 0-2. Having teams that are undefeated in your league and you not being one of them, you come around and you beat them during the regular season, get to the end of the year, you're not really going to be hurt too much. And in fact, it's going to help you in your ER rankings if you just kind of want to sign off on that analysis, or if you want to say, what the heck are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, no, 100% agreed there. That opponent win percentage is 35% of your ranking right there. So if you're playing strong teams, it's gonna help be a boost there. It's also gonna be really good for your resume. When the seating committee sits around, gets together and looks, they're gonna look at you go through and you win and go undefeated in the league where half the league is above 500. That's a pretty solid thing there, especially if you get convincing wins over those kind of mid-tier teams. I'll tell you, Kamiak, they're 2-0. It doesn't really surprise me because I know they had one win last year, but they scheduled like probably the toughest schedule I've ever seen in since I've been doing this. And they have some really talented kids, and it would not surprise me if they snuck in as maybe a 4 seed out of the Westco. They're a sneaky good team up there.
Yeah, and having Arlington in the league is going to help out a lot as well, because Arlington's a team that figures to probably win 8 to 9 games every year if you count the postseason. Depending on how league play goes for them, that's another team that could really boost in the RPI, so to speak. And if they were to upend a team like Lake Stevens, they could really help them out a lot, because once we get to that 4A, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, there's really not going to be a whole lot separating those teams in tier 2 and tier 3. And you're going to want to try to see if you can pad your resume as much as possible, and picking up a win against Lake Stevens later on down the road would be amazing. Even with them being 0-2, I think from a human element, everybody would look at Lake Stevens and say, okay, they're the 2-time defending champions. Let's ignore the fact that they lost to, at Sumner, that they lost to Bellevue as well. They've beaten Bellevue a couple times the last few years too. So Arlington's a team that can really stand to gain a lot, I think, out of where the Westco is at currently.
Yeah, and they had a thrilling win over Bothell last week too. That was just a fun game.
Yeah, and I'll mention those guys a little bit later as well. We'll go back to you, another team that you like that has surprised.
Yeah, so dropping down to 3A right there, a team that I had no expectation for this year, Central Valley out of Varadale. I had no expectations for them this year. Not only did they come out and had 2 really impressive wins, they shut out Mount Spokane in week 1. Mount Spokane that I had as a preseason top 10 team. So, I'm not gonna lie, that kind of came in, shocked me there. But they're looking really good from everything that I've seen so far.
Yeah, a team that we talked about in the first episode, team that reclassed, moved up from 2A to 3A. I had Cedro Woolley. Granted, their win over Mariner was expected by me, that they would end up winning that game. Via shutout is impressive nonetheless, 42-0. But coming back and beating Stanwood, convincingly, and they're 2-0 now, enjoying the fruits of their labor in 3A. Just to drop down to another team that I also had for 3A, and I'm going to give you the credit here for this one. You called it here. Shadle Park 2-0. They come in with wins over Ferris and Mount Spokane. That Mount Spokane win looks really good, but I don't know so much about where Mount Spokane is at right now. They're at 0-2 and kind of a head scratcher. They have a big game coming up this week. We'll see about where they end up, but that's a program that has been in the 3A playoffs the last few seasons and had decent runs, picked up wins in the postseason. But Shadle Park is a team that wasn't dominant in the 2A class over the last 4 years, but they come up and they beat a couple of 4A schools right away. So that's good for them.
Yeah, really good stuff happening there in Spokane in the 3A. And then Ridgeline's playing really good too. And as far as I'm concerned, I think there's only 2 bids coming out of GSL 3A for round of 32 there. So that's going to be a very tight race that Mount Spokane's kind of looking up at right now with a couple of their losses.
Yeah, just to stick in 3A, Bellarmine Prep 2-0. They've got wins over Rogers, Puyallup 4A, and then Auburn. Then you got Heritage down here in District 4. Heritage is a team that was looking at a 20-game losing streak over the last 2+ seasons. Then they come up with wins over Fort Vancouver, albeit that's a game they should win, and they did. But they came back and they beat Hudson's Bay this last week, and they beat them 31-10. And Hudson's Bay was a playoff team out of Greater St. Helens League last year, and they returned a good handful of players, and they've got a really deep coaching staff too, and guys that have had a lot of success and throughout the state the last few seasons. That's a good story. Whether or not Heritage keeps it up or not, I still think that they have an uphill battle in the Greater St. Helens 3A League with a couple good teams. And I don't think that they're a team that's going to make any real noise down the stretch, right? And if they did get into the postseason, I would be going in with low expectations, but I want to give Heritage their props. I want to give them their dues. They have put together a 2-game winning streak after losing 20 in a row. So good for them. The Timberwolves, once upon a time, expansion school down here in the year 2001, won a league championship, had a dude by the name of Ron Howard, not the guy that was on Andy Griffith's show or directed Apollo 11, but a guy who was a true Swiss Army knife that could score any way you need him to. He could run the ball, he could catch the ball, he could kick the ball. He was basically the Booby Miles of Heritage back then. So good to see Heritage getting a couple of victories.
And there in that Billiman Prep recap, you mentioned Rogers of Puyallup. We got to give them some kudos too. They won their first game this last week they beat Kent Ridge last week. It was their first win since November 4th of 2021 when they beat Bonnie Lake 21-7. They had a 21-game losing streak snapped. So 22-game losing streak snapped. So congratulations to the Rams up there in Rogers.
I want to give a round of applause, but it's got to be golf clap at this hour with little ones in the house.
Agreed.
Yes,
mm-hmm. I'll give snaps. Yep.
Let's jump out of 3A here, unless there's somebody else that you wanted to shout out real quick before we jump down a class.
No, I'm good. Let's go to 2A.
Yeah. So 2A, I'm just gonna go off the beaten path a little bit here, but West Valley Spokane, Matt, 2-0 so far on the season, and a win over a 4A Timberlake out of Idaho, and then also a win over Lakeside 9 Mile Falls 38-7. You know, it's not very often that you sit here and you say a 2A school beating a 1A school is impressive, right? But Lakeside is another one of those teams that have had a lot of success over the last few years at the 1A level, was in a state championship game just a season ago, and to beat them by 31 points. And then, by the way, I've been trying to learn your spreadsheet, by the way. Idaho's had really great success over the state of Washington so far this season in head-to-head matchups. You know, Moses Lake got their doors blown off in the game that they played. So I'm not taking that win lightly over Timberlake, although I don't know jack about them. I imagine you know way more than I do, but just based on what the computers look like in terms of those crossover matchups between Idaho and Washington teams, that's not a win that you can really overlook. We'll see how good West Valley is throughout the season, but they got a couple of tough games in league, but things look good for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. They had a really solid program a couple years ago. In fact, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, when we were doing the Twitter Spaces. We had a night where we were talking to their quarterback and their wide receiver out there, and I mean it's a really solid.
Grady
program.
Walker, yep,
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, really solid program out there. And I mean, the Timberlake win, I mean, Timberlake's kind of not the best team of there in Idaho, but a win's a win against an out-of-state opponent. But yeah, like you said, that 31-point win over Lakeside really kind of piqued my interest of, is West Valley really good? Is Lakeside kind of not so good, or are we kind of somewhere in the middle there? But yeah, West Valley is a really, really solid 2A team there.
And then who are you looking at for 2A as well?
So I had one down in 2A, and I put down Eatonville. I did not see them beating Cascade Christian in week 1. Yeah. It was, I mean, I was following along with my buddy Skip Smith there, given the Twitter updates week, or the Facebook updates week 1. And, when he posted that one as a final, I kind of pinched myself like, is he serious about that? But yeah, now Eatonville just, they've kind of, they were really strong a couple years ago. They kind of took a step back, but it looks like they may have found their mojo, and they're looking up over there in the SBSL 2A.
Yeah, I definitely had that listed as well. And that was another team that we had talked about in episode 1, moving up, that can compete right away. They're in a league that has a couple of tough teams, and I got one that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But yeah, good for the Cruisers. I had no doubt that they were a team that was going to move up and have a chance to compete. They've had good success over the last few years. They've turned out recruits that have gone Division 1 over the last few years as well. So I'm definitely into that. I'm into Eatonville. I'm glad that you said that. I had a comment here. I can't see who it is, but Skyline versus Issaquah this week is interesting. Absolutely. Skyline, here's Spanish Schools, Eastside Catholic. They're 2-0. I'm not so surprised about that. the game that you had, Eastside Catholic beating Eastlake. I already told you the rule. I can't not pick against Eastlake. That's just out of fear. But man, they really kind of had their way with the Wolves in that game, and I think Eastside Catholic is definitely worthy of praise. Surprise at this point? Not at all. I'm not surprised that they are where they're at. But guys, keep the comments coming in, please, to the YouTube live stream comment section. I'm definitely pulling those up. Jake Moe said Montesano at Ridgefield was a close game. Yeah, it was. In fact, Montesano, took the lead late in that game and had to hold on for about 5.5-ish minutes, but Ridgefield carved out a long drive, which included a couple of fourth down conversions. And they ultimately score the last touchdown of the game late, and they get away with a win there. But back to some 2A teams that we're talking about. The last one that I had here on my list, Matt, 5 Trojans. The 5 Trojans are 2-0, and they just beat White River this last week, and White River just moved up to the 3A class. They took down Hawkinson the week before. Matt, both those games weren't close. In fact, it was the combined total is 96-7. Fife has outscored those two opponents, and they got a big one coming up here this week already. But there was talk out of the Fife high school area that they had a squad this year, that they were ready to come and they were ready to prove that they belong with the big boys in the 2A class, and mainly the team that won league last year is not there anymore, Enumclaw. But the team that finished second, Ording, they were right there with them last year too, and that league has been one of those leagues where any team can beat anybody, it seems, on any one given week. But Fife looks like a really, really tough team at this point in the season, and I'm really interested to keep my eye on that game that they got this week. I'm not going to talk about it quite yet. We'll talk about it later maybe.
I think I agree with you. Fife is definitely they've had a great start to the season, but I'll be honest with you, coming into the season, I didn't put them on my list because it really didn't surprise me to see them go out and absolutely stop those guys. If they get a win this week over their opponent, which we'll talk about a little later, possibly, I would probably put them, kind of put them on that surprising list because I don't think I would have expected that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Fife has just they've been really good the last few years, and they just seem like they're constantly just getting better. And I think that, like you said, with Enumclaw out of the league this year, this could be their chance to, take the SPSL by the horns and just run with it.
Well, they also got Eatonville now into the mix. So you got a couple of teams that are already 2-0 in that league. And the game that they have this week coming up is going to be one of those games where we could look back on at the end of the year and be like, man, this was way more critical of a game than I gave it validity of in week 3. So any more teams that I think you already mentioned you had one team in 2A. Yeah. So I'm assuming that we're dry on 2A now.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So for 1A, I mean, obviously I already mentioned the Trico League, but I'm just going to summarize real quick. So am I surprised by Seton Catholic? No. Am I surprised by La Center? No. I'm a little surprised in Kalama. If you told me Kalama was playing Woodland week 1 and then Tenino week 2, Tenino's been a team that has had some success over the last couple of years, last year not really being one of them, but they're 2-0 in those games. I'd be a little surprised, I would say. Aiden Brown, the quarterback, does not surprise me with anything he does. He's an absolute beast, but Kalama did lose a couple of guys along the way from last year's team. Castle Rock 2-0, Kingsway 2-0. Little surprised by those teams, but Meridian was the team that really jumped off the map to me, Matt. Meridian's 2-0. They play at Northwest 1A, which is great for the other teams in that league because now they've got another tough game, and Mount Baker's always a game opponent every week. But Meridian at 2-0, man. Deer Park and OMAC beating both of those teams. Deer Park moving up to 2A, and then that win over OMAC. Boy, howdy. That game was not close at all. And OMAC's a team that, went into the round of quarterfinals, I believe, last year in 1A. Man, I mean, so you want to talk about a team in 1A that jumps off the map at me right away for surprise? It's Meridian. Yeah,
I actually have them as one of my 2. Meridian, that first week going to Wenatchee for that neutral site with Deer Park. They looked really solid there, but yeah, that week 2 game, That was one of those games when I saw the score, I went to a couple different places to check to make sure it was inputted correctly. It was just blew me away. I mean, and then they've, like you said, they've got themselves, they played that really tough Northwest 1A conference. And this week, let's see, who do they have this week? And this week they have Kamiak. So, you've got, I mean, that's going to be another just huge test for them. If they can, if Meridian can win against Kamiak this week, or even if they don't win, even if they keep it close, I think that's going to be just a huge boost for that program. The other, I had one other team on there sticking in the Whatcom County area. I had the Blaine Border Rights on there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wins over Renton, and Renton's kind of, I mean, they're not necessarily a top tier 2A team, but they're a pretty solid 2A program, Kingco program. But also beating Cedar Park Christian of Bothell. I mean, Cedar Park Christians, they're not the cream of the Emerald Sound League, but they're a very solid program. And to get two really good wins when that program has kind of been down the last few years, it's nice to see them getting some victories and building some momentum for that program.
Yeah, I definitely saw what we were looking at with Blaine there, and the entire Northwest Conference 1A deserves some praise. The only team with a loss, Linden Christian, I mean, I'm a little surprised but Vancouver College ends up beating them in a, non-league, non-country game. So that's the only team that's picked up an L so far, and that just bodes well for however the layout comes when it comes time for allocations and whoever's left when the dust settles. You look at Nooksack Valley, the teams that they've beaten so far here, Onalaska and Renton. Comparatively, Matt, if you look at Renton and their game against Nooksack Valley, 49-12 for Nooksack, but then Blaine 42-20. We're not too far off of where the results lie there. I mean, obviously each game's played out differently, but you got to feel pretty good if you're Blaine at this point in the season.
Yeah, completely agree.
Ooh, I like it. I got a dog too. It's a golden retriever. What kind of dog you got there, Matt?
I got myself a pit bull.
Ooh, okay.
Pit bull terrier.
I like it. Pit bull terrier.
Oh yeah, 70-pound lap dog.
Oh, I bet that he or she just needs a treat and some ear scratches.
Oh, he will. He was hanging out in his kennel while Mama was getting home.
There we go. Back to the last team we already talked about it. Most impressive win. So you got to admit it. Life Christian 2-0. Linwood, they beat them by 50 something, I think, almost 60 points. But a win over Napavine. Anytime Napavine loses at all, it's worthy of a surprise, because it just doesn't happen very often. And if it does, it happens in a state championship game usually. But Life Christian, man, 2-0, super impressed.
As long as they can stay healthy, that's sustainable. But if they start, losing some of their guys there, I think that's when it's going to be, But yeah, I agree with you that I don't know why I just assumed that Napavine was just going to go up there and, and not roll them, but maybe 2 or 3 touchdown win. But yeah, it was a huge win for Coach Dennis and the boys up there at Life Christian.
Well, I think it's time to drop down to 2B here, Matt. I do have a couple of teams that surprised me. The first one I had was Warden. Warden sitting at 2-0 currently, wins over Medical Lake and wins over Mossy Rock. And Mossy Rock 0-2 so far. I'm not going to take anything away from Warden, though, winning that game. They won that game by a couple of scores. And Mossy Rock's a team that's had good success in 1B over the last few years, a team that likes to be physical and run the ball at the point of attack. And I don't think that the win over Medical Lake is anything to sneeze at as well. So, Warden was the first team at 2-0 that kind of surprised me.
Yeah, I agree with you there. They've got a pretty winnable game this weekend against Tenasket. So there's a good chance they could be 3-0, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they perform once league starts. Because you look at their division in the EWAC there, and Columbia, Burbank, Riverview, and Tri-Cities Prep are all 0-2, but they're all really solid teams. So we're going to find out in the next few weeks how if Warden is for real or if that really is just kind of a surprise.
Who'd you have for 2B?
Well, I kind of went seating committee homer, and I wrote down a Soden. Jim Holman's boys over there are just they're looking really good. They their win against Riverview this last week, they scored 63 points. I think they had like 500 yards rushing, didn't even throw the ball once. They scored 97 points the first 2 weeks against two perennial playoff teams in Tri-Cities Prep and Riverview. And, they just the last few, they have some dudes up there. And I just think that, if for people around the program, it's probably not surprising, but for those of us that aren't, right there in the greater Asotin area, I think that they're looking at them going, maybe this is the year that that they take the next step and they can make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, the entire league has been phenomenal, and credit where credit is due. Sticking in the same area there, I also not surprised, right? I know that's the whole point of this exercise is to be surprised, but I'm still a little surprised that Freeman's 2-0 at this point, considering that they played a couple of 2A schools in the first 2 weeks, and they just beat Rogers of Spokane, a team that had a little bit of hype behind them coming into this season. Obviously, we're going to find out a little bit more about Freeman for sure this next week. We won't talk about the game quite yet, but still a little impressed and still not totally surprised, but a team that I think deserves some shout outs right now. Well, I guess that leaves us with 1B now, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I've only got one down. I put down Liberty Christian, 44-point win over Nia Bay. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that they're 2-0, but that win is just huge for that program and just huge for Coach Lukens and the boys. And, they've got a huge one this week that maybe we'll talk about later. But, yeah, no, they're the team I've got down there.
I have them written down, of course, with the wins over Garfield, Palouse, and Nia Bay. But the other team that I had was Nacelle, the Nacelle Comets, 2-0. Win over Darrington on the road, handedly by roughly 30 points. And then a big win over Wahkiakum, and Wahkiakum, a team that dropped down as well as Nacelle this last season to play in the 1B ranks. So kudos to the Comets of Nacelle. They are definitely off and running, and they're a team that I think is, they got a good quarterback down there in Lindstrom. So I think that they could very easily be a contender by the time, the season winds down. The more I look at it, I think 1B is pretty wide open at this point. I think that's one of the classes that, you could argue is maybe the most wide open.
I think there's probably 5 or 6 really solid teams in there that have a good run at state. I think once you go past like Wilbur Creston, Elmira Cooley, Liberty Christian, DeSales, Nia Bay, and Nacelle, I think after that it kind of gets maybe a little, you maybe have to stretch for maybe like DeSales, Pomeroy, the next tier there. But I think there are plenty of teams that could win it. It's just going to come down to matchups and where you end up when the dance starts.
For sure. All right. So before we move on real quick to some teams that are 0-2 and that might have some concerns going forward, I just want to mention, I haven't done it yet, but our Long Lumberjacks got a win this last week in overtime at Centralia. And that's big because they had a 10-game losing streak. And nice to see the Lumberjacks pick up a win 21-15. Two teams that have struggled a lot over the last couple of years. But, shout out to Jackson Rivenis, junior quarterback, stepped in and ended up having the game-winning score. And Tremaine Jenkins, wide receiver down here, big numbers as always when he gets a chance to catch the ball. 6 catches, 127 yards. Didn't find Pater, but good job, boys. Way to bring it home. And they got a game coming up this week against Hudson's Bay. We won't be picking that game on our pick 6 tonight, but that leads me into our 0-2 teams and teams that we have maybe some concerns about. I always try to tread lightly in this scenarios because I do know that players and coaches watch the show and they love bulletin board material. Hopefully they find some positives out of this and they want to jam it up the N2 guy and the Evans ranking guys, but the first team I want to talk about kind of piggybacks off of that game that I was just talking about, R. Long and Hudson's Bay, and it's Hudson's Bay for me. At 0-2 right now, losing to Heritage, not the end of the world, I would say, but 31-10, a team that, was returning a quarterback, and I know that they were down some offensive linemen in their first game. We had that on the pick 6 against Napavine. I believe that you went Napavine in that game, and I went Hudson's Bay, and I looked like a total fool, I guess, by the end of that one, because it was a running clock, 46-6, heading into league play. I do have some concerns about where the Hudson's Bay Eagles are, and a game against R.A. Long at Kiggins Bowl, a late kickoff at 8 o'clock, might be, kind of what the doctor ordered, so to speak, to have a chance to right the ship. But R.A. Long with some momentum, and I'm sure that they're going to be looking at Hudson's Bay as a game that is winnable for them, and they shouldn't be looking at it in any other capacity. But Hudson's Bay was a team that I thought was going to contend and possibly win. I picked them to win the 2A Greater St. Helens League, which is just an absolute mess right now, by the way. But that was the first team that jumped out at me. Not sure if you want to piggyback on that at all, if you want to jump to another team that you might have some concerns over at this point.
In week 2, it was kind of tough when I was going through my list. Or two too early to really have a lot of that could be concerned about, but there were 2 that I just kind of looked and I was like, okay, these guys, I kind of hope that they can, if the 2 that I have down, they're both 2A teams, both here from Eastern Washington. I've got Clarkston, the Bantams, down. They've played 2 really tough Idaho schools in the first 2 weeks, but they've only scored 6 points. They just haven't really got it going offensively. And they get going in league this week against Rogers and playoffs. So Clarkson really needs to get it figured out soon before they get too far, before they get too deep into the season and they don't have an opportunity to right the ship. The other team that I've got down is the Prosser Mustangs. Prosser's 0-2. They had a tough loss to Ephrata week 1 that I think I heard was controversial. I didn't hear anything about it. I didn't get any more information, but a shock loss to Toppenish in week 2. I don't think anybody had that one down. And then on top of that, they've got a Thursday game against 2-0 East Valley this week. It's do or die time for them. Like they could be 0-3 in league at the end of this week. So it's going to be huge for the Mustangs to get it figured out, But I think that as we get into it in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think we'll be able to kind of see our lists expand a little bit more and just kind of teams that maybe we just hope can they just need maybe just a little bit of motivation, even though they don't need motivation from us. They see they see the records. They know they want to get on the win column.
Sure. I had Prosser down at 0-2 as well in a league that added a couple of teams with Quincy and Toppenish coming up from 1A, and you mentioned that loss to Toppenish, and not the end of the world at this point, at 0-2 for any team to where they can't dig themselves out of it. But when you're already in league play and you're losing games, that does make it a little bit tougher. It's a small sample size, but I love it. I love it. I don't want to beat the drum, right? But Mountain View at 0-2 right now is a real head scratcher for me. Mount Spokane, another team at 0-2, not really the norm for either of those 2 programs. Ferndale and Stanwood both at 0-2 right now. Tough to see finding success if you're, losing some close games to some league opponents. And then Marysville Pilchuck, they joined the 2A Northwest Conference. They're already 0-2, and you got games still, with Anacortes and Archbishop Murphy and Linden. North Kitsap at 0-2. Not just surprised that they lost to WF West, I suppose, in week 1, but the way they lost, and 40-7, I think, in that game. And then they turned around and just lost most recently this last week. I'm trying to just double check on who that was against here, but I remember when I was looking at it, I was just kind of like, wow, that's just not very North Kitsap-y, Let's see. They lost to Linden Christian 26-15. So, I'm not like totally concerned. I think that they're going to have a chance to still win their league, right? But just the way that it started in terms of what they're crossing over with, and the game against WF West really opened my eyes. Woodland as well. Woodland's lost to a pair of 1A Tricode schools. They got beat 34-15 against Kalama, got shut out against La Center, 28-0. Kings as well, starting out 0-2, losing by multiple scores in the first couple of weeks. And then OMAC, that last loss up to Blaine, man. I mean, OMAC starting 0-2 playoff team from a year ago, getting running clock 55-6. A little bit of concerns there in terms of where they're at. The good news is for the teams like Hudson's Bay, North Kitsap, and Woodland, and Mountain View for that matter, winnable leagues still at 0-2. There's nothing really in front of them that makes me say that they're going to have a super difficult time of still having a chance to snag a playoff berth.
Sorry, I cut out there for a second. I agree with you about some of the schools. North Kitsap, they definitely do have a winnable league there. Some of the schools you mentioned on your concern list, I actually have on my 0-2 that are still fine list.
That's fine.
I put down 6 teams on that one. I've got Lake Stevens, Graham Kapowson. Obviously, those teams, they're 0-2, but they're just fine. One of the teams you mentioned in 3A, I've got Stanwood down. I mean, Stanwood has a tough division in Westco North there, but their 2 losses, I mean, they were in that week 1 game against Spanaway Lake. They only lost by a touchdown to Cedro Woolley. I'm not concerned about Stanwood. I think that, they make a win as maybe a 3 seed into crossovers, but that's a pretty good spot to be in. I think that the North is probably the tougher of the 2 divisions there. I've got North Kitsap down as well. I mean, North Kitsap, they lost a couple of games. I didn't think that that week 1 game kind of shocked me, but I think that Olympic League is definitely winnable for them. And then the 2 I've got in 1A, I've got Montesano and Kings. I think they're going to win their divisions easily. I think they're going to still be pretty good seeds, but I don't see them. I don't see their 0-2 starts being too big of a hindrance. I think it may bump them down to like a 6, 7, 8 seed as we get to see the tournaments. But other than that, I think that it's just scheduled tough, and it's going to get you prepared for the league.
Yeah, I actually had Clarkston on my 0-2 don't panic list yet. I still think that when it comes to them playing teams in their league in the 2A class, that they're going to probably be okay long term. Obviously, time will tell, but Graham Kapowson's obviously on my don't panic 0-2 list. Lake Stevens, of course, Mount Tahoma. Those are a couple of teams that I feel pretty confident about. A 1-1 team. I mean, if you're 1-1, there shouldn't be any panic at all. But a team that should not panic and should be encouraged, in fact, Liberty Bell at 1-1. Played Okanagan really tough. And Okanagan looks like they could be in that pound for pound rankings, top 5 in the entire state of Washington, maybe even top 3, depending on how you value your pound for pound rankings. But I think that Liberty Bell should be pretty encouraged.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like where that program's at. I'd like to see some of their film. I kind of, like we were talking about in the preview show. I'm intrigued to see the how they transition from the 8-man game to the 11-man game with adding those 2 more offensive linemen out there. And so hopefully I can get my hands on some Liberty Bell film. I'd love to go watch what they're doing.
Yeah, I also didn't have a ton of concern for Bothell at 0-2.
Yeah.
I think Bothel's a team that is going to be just fine. Played a couple of tough opponents and played tough in those games, so I think that they're going to be okay. Roosevelt at 1-1. That might be one of the most dangerous 1-1 teams that is in the whole state right now. I mean, their only losses to Camas 12-6. They come back and they beat Seattle Prep. I feel really good about where they're at. Lincoln of Tacoma, I feel really good about them still at 1-1. No concerns there, losing to Yelm. Montesano, you mentioned already at 0-2. I think it's a very winnable league still. I'd be really surprised if they didn't finish first out of the EVCO 1A. And then Napavine 1-1. No concerns there. Onalaska 1-1. I think Onalaska's pound for pound one of the better teams in 2B. So, losing a game isn't quite the end of the world. I also have Mark Morris on here at 0-2. I got Mark Morris on here at 0-2 simply because playing Seton Catholic, playing Kelso in the first 2 weeks. I'm not saying that you expect to lose games, right? Because you don't do that in coaching and playing. But I don't think anybody outside of the coach's room and outside of the field where the players play is surprised that Mark Morris is 0-2. I feel that there's maybe been a little bit of reservations about how they're going to go about attacking defenses throughout the league play. And if you go based off of how they played in their jamboree against some teams that are in the league, I feel pretty good about where they're at. And then you look around, there's only one team that's still undefeated out of an 8-team league, and that's Ridgefield. And then they got Ridgefield at home. I think Mark Morris is a team, like I picked in the dark horse thing, that I think that they're still okay, and wouldn't be surprised to see them somewhere in that 3-2 range by the end of the year. Those are the teams that I was kind of looking at and didn't really think much of where they're at.
Absolutely. Anytime you got that Top Gun offense there, it's always going to give teams problems.
I'm telling you, man, that it has not been full Top Gunny yet. I haven't seen what I think I've seen, if you know what I mean. I got a feeling that they're going to be just fine. And I'll tell you this much, before we move on to rankings, and then we'll get to our picks and close it out here. But Seton Catholic is good, good, and they got a running back that makes defenses make, quote, business decisions. I don't know if you had a chance to peep in on that live stream the other day at all on Friday, but they are every bit as advertised. And I think La Center is going to push them. They beat them last year, but Seton Catholic is a team that might be one of the few that matches up with Royal, who continues to just be stupid, just so good. But I'm really intrigued by Seton Catholic. All right. Any final thoughts on any of that before we move into our personal top 5 rankings for each class?
Well, considering rankings is in my name, I think I'm ready for rankings.
Good deal. I just want everybody to know real quick, right, that I did not use Matt's computer at all to help in these rankings. I just kind of went off of, where I think teams are at based on where they've been in the past and what I've seen so far on film, which is very little. So,
and I definitely did not plagiarize from Todd Mellis and Scarbook Live.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't open that yet because I wanted to go in unbiased. I mean, I'm sure that they're right on par with where we are here. So I defer to you as Mr. Rankings himself. So let's start in. You want to go 4A or you want to go 1B and work up?
That's tough. Let's go 1B. Let's work our way up. Let's add the suspense.
Okay, let's do it. So I'll let you start with 1B, and then I'll go.
All right. So 1B. This one I think it's pretty cut and dry. Sorry. Oh my god. Who cares? Sorry. All right. So 1B here. All right. I'm starting from 5 to 1. I'm going Nia Bay number 5, Elmira Cooley Heartland number 4, Nacelle 3, Wilbur Creston Keller 2, Liberty Christian 1. I think that 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable, but I think that Liberty Christian has the better overall win right now over Nia Bay as opposed to Wilbur Creston Keller's best win. But I don't sleep on Nacelle though. I think that, like we talked about earlier, I think they're a really good program. If I remember correctly, I think that Lindstrom kid's 6'6". So you have an athletic 6'6" kid as an 8-man quarterback. I mean, that's just it's wild. But those rankings right there sets up number 4 at number 1 this week over at Kamaikin with ACH coming down here to the Tri-Cities. So it's gonna be a fun one to watch.
All right, so I'll go reverse order as well. Number 5, DeSale. Number 4, Nacelle. Number 3, Elmira Cooley Heartline. Number 2, Wilbur Creston and Keller. Number 1, Liberty Christian.
Yeah, DeSales is really good. I've got them at 6. They're right there. I'm still just I still think Nia Bay is really, really good. I just kind of want to see how they bounce back, and I want to see how DeSales goes this week. I can't remember who they're playing. Who are they playing? DeSales plays against. Oh, they play Sherman Connon of Oregon. They'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at for my 1B list. I mean, I like Nacelle in the top 5 at this point. I think that
I do too.
I think a win on the road against Darrington, against a senior heavy team, and I picked Darrington to win that game. So
yeah, I did too.
What do I know?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you there. I think that win over Darrington was A, unexpected by us, but B, I think that how they did it really kind of puts them in that. It kind of puts them into that upper echelon of 8-man football.
And then fans, if you want to type in your top 5 in each classification or the one that you care about the most, don't matter to me. I'm going to start here in 2B, just so we go opposites here, in reverse order. I had a real time coming up with 5 here. I wrote 6 down. I know that sounds cheap and cheating, but first team out, I guess in 6, I had Toledo, the Riverhawks of Toledo. I think that Toledo has got an interesting combination of physicality, able to run the ball, and a team that is built to travel to come later on in the postseason. And I think that they've done a pretty good job so far, considering where they're at 2-0. At 5, I have Liberty Bell at 1-1. And I think that Liberty Bell is a team that might actually be able to play themselves a little bit higher up in the rankings thus far. But there's a lot of tough teams in 2B above them in the rankings, and it will work itself out. At 4, I've got the Freeman Scotties. And at 3, I've got Northwest Christian of Colbert. And they're going to play each other coming up this weekend. And a week 3 game where you've got playoff caliber football on the field for both sides is super exciting. We had Coach Marshall Hart comment in, great show. That must mean that, we do an okay job, because he's a great guy. We had him on last year on our live show. So good to see that he's watching, and he's always got a good team, and really interested to see how they match up with the Freeman Scotties, a team that's won 2 games against 2A opponents. Number 2, I still got Napavine despite the loss to Life Christian this last week. Based on the running clock win at Hudson's Bay, and a team that I think is going to probably have no problem winning their league again and being the top seed here out of the 2B Central North and the 2B Central South. I like Napavine still at number 2. I'd have a hard time picking against them, against any of those teams below them. And then at number 1, I still have Okanagan. I think Okanagan is untested at this point, and I'm really interested to see how things shake out for the matchup that they have. We'll talk about here in a little while coming up this week. But that's my top 6-5.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. It's really tough to narrow it down to just 5.
Yeah.
I've got 7 on mine, but I'm only going to say the top 5. Number 5, I'm going with good old hashtag run the damn ball on Alaska. I just love what they do. I think they've got one of the best running backs in the state. Just absolutely love that program. I think that they're going to make lots of noise there in Central 2B. Number 4, I've got the Freeman Scotties. Number 3, I've got Northwest Christian Colbert, and that's not because Coach Hart commented in. I did not flip those 2 around. Number 2, I've got Napavine. Number 1, I've got Okanagan. I think I just think that even with Napavine, if they would have beat Life Christian, I still give a slight edge to Okanagan. I think that they just, until they lose, or until Napavine, until Okanagan loses, I think that they're the clear number 1 team.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I still have Liberty Bell here as a top 5 team. I'm not saying they went toe-to-toe with Okanagan, but they did put up 20-plus points, and, Okanagan has a really, really solid defense. I like where Liberty Bell was at the end of that ball game, results-wise. I do like your Onalaska selection. Onalaska's played, I believe, Nooksack Valley week 1, and, it was 42-16, but probably a lot of positives that you can take away from that. And like you mentioned, running the football, team that was a semifinalist, I think, a year ago in 2B. I like where they're at as well. I think that's totally acceptable. That means, Matt, that we got to go to 1A, and that means that you are going to start this one.
Sounds good. 1A. I'm starting at number 5 with the boys from Life Christian Academy. I think I have them slightly above La Center. I think that if you're looking at between those two, I think that if you're looking at just top end talent, I would give the edge to Life Christian. But if you're looking at just whole team depth involved with everything, I'd go La Center. But for the sake of power rankings, I'm going with Life Christian. I'm going number 4, Kashmir. Number 3, Seton Catholic. Number 2, Nooksack Valley. Number 1, the Royal Knights.
Yeah, I made a top 10 just in case because I think it's really tough, honestly, for how to rank these teams in that middle portion of the top 10. But if I came up with a top 5, I would have Nooksack Valley at 5 thus far. And obviously, they're going to have a chance to play themselves up a little bit higher in my rankings. Life Christian at 4, got to give them a lot of credit for picking up the win against Napavine. 2-0 so far on the season. La Center is my number 3. You know, beating a team that was the champions of the Greater St. Helens League 2A last year in Woodland, shutting them out, knowing that they still have Elijah Anderson in playing a quarterback this year. He's been running back the last few years, but super impressed with where La Center's at. I believe they returned a combined 16 starters. I think that they're a team that they're a great regular season team, Matt. Their biggest issue has been coming through in the postseason. You know, the loss last year to OMAC was a real head scratcher, not something that anybody really saw coming. And I thought La Center was a top 5 team last year. We'll see if they have everything kind of ironed out. But so far, so good for me at number 3. Number 2, I got Seton Catholic. Look, La Center won the league last year, but Seton Catholic went further. They got a lot of athletes on this team that make it look effortless, but their offensive line, their defensive line play really stood out to me. Excuse me. And then number 1, number 0, Royal. Really not much that we have to consider at that point. You know, that's about where we're at. First team out I had at 6 was Kashmir. I like where Kashmir's at. I just wanted to mention that because you said something about them. So
just so physical. Just gosh, I love that team. I actually had some folks last week after, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago after our pod where I said that Seton Catholic was going to beat Royal in the state championship game. A couple of friends of mine up there in Royal are like, "You serious? You really think that's going to happen? You really think?" I'm like, no. Just I got to change it up a little bit. Yeah, Royals clearly the number 1. Cannot wait for that game against Kashmir. It's going to be a heck of a league matchup.
That means we're going to move on to 2A. By the way, real quick, we're kind of close here. I mean, we got a few flip-flop, but for the most part, we're on the same teams here.
It's going to end right here.
Yeah. You think it's going to be identical?
No, I think I have one that's not going to be on your list. Maybe 2.
Okay. Well, I did again put down a top 10 just in case, you know, because I think it's tough. But when we get to 5, where I'm at so far, I'm at Archbishop Murphy at 5. I think that's a team that's very fit. You want to talk about physicality, you know, big up front. They got to be. You know, they're going to be going up against some really tough defenses in the Northwest Conference. So I'm comfortable with where they're at. And my first team out was Orting at 6. So just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a synopsis about where I'm at there. I think Orting's real close. If you're asking me to compare the teams, I would just go off of league strength and where the hierarchy of power has been the last few seasons. So I'm going to give Archbishop the nod there. At 4, I'm going WF West. WF West with the win over Capital, albeit it wasn't as impressive as the win over North Kitsap, but North Kitsap, you know, perennial contender. We called them a team that's part of the core 4 in 2A, and we both, I think, had them on the outside in our predictions for semifinals and beyond. But I didn't have them this far outside, and there's a lot of time. I remember last year North Kitsap got beat pretty badly by Tumwater in the regular season early in the year, and by the time the season came around to the end when they played in a rematch in the semifinals, it was a 2-point game, 19-17, I believe. So North Kitsap will, I think, turn it around. But right now, WF West, very impressive at 4 for me. At 3, I got Linden. I don't really think that there's really much explanation needed. Brant Hebner, you want to talk about another quarterback with good size, 6'6", just a heck of a nice kid too. And, one of the best programs in the state. At 2, I got Tumwater, and then at 1, I got Anacortes. I think that those two teams have solidified themselves as being above the rest. Pick your order. I'm going to go defending champs based on them playing last year and returning a bulk of their star players. So that's where I'm at.
I'm curious. Before I say mine, I'm curious. Who do you have at number 7?
I had a real tough time with this one. I'm not going to just call it a layup, right? I'll give you my 10. At 10, I had Ridgefield.
Okay.
At 9, I had Squalicum. At 8, I had Othello.
Okay.
And then at 7, I had Fife.
Okay. So I was curious at that because I have my top 5. My top 3 I felt very confident with. The next 2 I kind of had 4 that I was like right in there with. So the 2 that didn't quite make the list are WF West and Archbishop Murphy.
Okay.
I have Othello at 5. I have Ording 4. I have Linden 3, Tumwater 2, Anacortes 1. But like you said, those top 3, I feel like, top 2 have separated themselves. Linden's in another tier by themselves. But after that, in that next tier, those 4 and even Fife, just interchangeable. I think you can't go wrong. You can make an argument for any one of them being over that.
Yeah. We're not really far off, I guess. It's going to work itself out. I mean, sooner rather than later, too. But Squalicum was a team that was kind of on my surprise, tier B list. I think that they're a team that's a little bit surprising. And, I mean, Northwest is just incredibly loaded. And even teams that are struggling at this point are still really, really good. So they're going to play in a lot of leagues.
We'll learn about Squalicum this week because they have Archbishop Murphy.
Yeah.
So if they'll tell us whether they deserve to be in that top 10 or not.
No, 100%. All right, 3A. Getting to the big boys, and then after that we'll do our 4A rankings, and then we'll pick 6.
All right, so let's look at 3A.
Yep.
So
let's go with
3A.
you first.
3A. I feel confident about the top 4. 5, I had a few teams I kind of considered, but I went with the team that I think isn't necessarily the strongest. Yeah, but I went, but the team that I think is the best in their league. I considered Roosevelt. I considered linking up Tacoma, but 5, I went with Monroe. Yeah, I went with Monroe at number 5, and then I went Kennewick 4, O'Day 3, Eastside Catholic 2, Bellevue 1. Yep. Yeah.
We did not rehearse this.
No.
Yeah, right there. There it is. I got Roosevelt at 6, Monroe at 5, Kennewick at 4, O'Day at 3, Eastside Catholic at 2, and Bellevue at 1. And if I had to, come put together a combined class ranking, Bellevue would be my number 1 at this point.
Me too.
In the entire state. So
yep, me too.
I feel good about Monroe being at 5, to be honest with you. With the amount of players that they had returning, I don't think it's asinine for them to be there. Now, does that mean they would beat Lincoln of Tacoma? Does that mean they beat Roosevelt in a head-to-head? I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I do feel with where they're at currently, and they're gonna beat a lot of teams 50-0.
Yep.
We'll call it what it is. It's gonna happen throughout the year. But really, what it comes down to in 3A is, can you break past? Honestly, the round of 16. Round of 16 is really tough to get by in 3A. If you get to the quarterfinals, you're a bona fide team in the state of Washington. So we'll see if they can get there this year. But Kennewick still with an amazing running game, good defense. Their game against Chiawana will be one that I'm definitely interested in. By the way, talk about surprises, man. Chiawana shutting out Kamiakin this last week. 48-0, 49-0,
44-0.
Oh, still either way.
You can't give them too many points there. Give them too many points there.
No.
Yeah.
Let's close it out, Matt. 4A, and I had a top 10 here again. I wrote down all these teams and tried to figure out where I had them in, but Number 5, I had Kennedy Catholic, and I think it's tough to leave them out of the top 5 just because they had a game that got canceled, and I believe it was by forfeit. If you want to correct me on that, but I know that Highline did not want to play the game.
It's not necessarily that Highline didn't want to play the game. The game was forced as a cancellation because the Highline School District suffered a cyber attack on their school-wide cyber system.
Okay.
And according to what I heard from sources, they in the Highline School District, like in many school districts, if school is not in session, then sports practices cannot happen. Normally, in those circumstances, that's for like winter if a snow day happens. But in this circumstance, the school district followed the letter to the law, and they would not let Highline practice. And so there were attempts to make to be able to make the game happen, maybe on Saturday, maybe Monday, but it did not work out, unfortunately. But it was not a thing that Highline didn't want to play. It was that they were forced not to play by their school district.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that for those that were curious, including myself, actually. But nonetheless, I still have their scheduled opponent, Kennedy Catholic, at 5. And Lake Stevens, I still have in the top 5 here, Matt, at 4. I still feel good about them at 0-2, and I don't have a problem putting them there at number 4. I just kind of go, I mean, realistically, I have no problem with them being number 2. Like, if you really wanted to put them at number 2 at 0-2, I got no problem with it, really. Like, if you're asking me who I would favor in games against the teams that I have ranked above them right now, I'd probably pick Lake Stevens still. But for the sake of getting other teams in there for the hard work that they've put in so far, I've got Skyview at 3 with wins over Radford at Hawaii and then wins over Graham Kapowsin, albeit it was a late miraculous fashion. You still got to give credit where credit's due. I'm going to stay right down there in the Greater St. Helens 4A. I got Camas at number 2. The Papermakers had a tough outing week 1 against Roosevelt, but I think that'll prove to be a really quality win by the time the season's over. I wouldn't be surprised to see Roosevelt trip up some really good teams in 3A along the way. And at number 1, I mean, it's got to be the Sumner Spartans. I think Sumner's done everything that they deserve, done everything that makes them deserve to be number 1 at this point, which includes beating the defending state champions. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's a very, very good list. My list, I also have Kennedy Catholic at number 5. I have the East Lake Wolves at number 4. I have Lake Stevens at 3. I have Sumner at 2, and then I have those Papermakers from Camas at number 1. I was very impressed. The win over Roosevelt was really close, but Roosevelt has a lot of talent this year that they didn't have last year. But I was very impressed with the win over Clackamas this last week. I thought that game was going to be a lot closer than it was, and I think Camas has a couple of Camas plays Monroe later on this season too, so there's another one to watch out for Monroe. But I think that I really like what Camas does. I like the program. I think they're in a really good spot. Do I think right now they're going to win state? I don't, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that right now they're the best team in 4A.
Yeah. No, if they continue at the pace that they're playing at against the level of competition that they're scheduling, I think that it can be very, very beneficial for Camas when it comes time to seed the 4A class, and they can possibly get some matchups, that'll help them better their chances of getting to the semifinal round. We'll say that. We'll start there. I think that should be a realistic goal for where Camas is at in terms of where they should end up by the time the season's over with. I think that they shouldn't be expecting to be anywhere shorter of the semifinals.
I agree.
Especially with where I have where Skyview is at, and I think that a win over them. And then Battleground at 2-0 as well. Battleground is scheduled pretty tough for the most part over the last few years. Some things that could really help their RPI. And then, of course, a game over Monroe, team that wins by a lot and pads the RPI stats. I wanted to throw Woodinville in here real quick before we move on, Matt. I have them at 6, and hard to make what I don't know about, is it Glenosha of California, but they took a game against them in week 1 and kind of gave it to them a lot. But I think Woodinville might be a team that was a little bit, I don't want to say underrated, but overlooked a little bit coming into the season. And then Richland at number 7 is where I was at. And then Chihuahua 8, Gonzaga Prep 9, Yelm at 10. It's kind of where I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that the East Side teams being down there in the 7, 8, 9 range is probably pretty solid for them right now. I'm still kind of, I mean, Chiawanas kind of had the good and the bad with the getting blown out by Rocky Mountain, but having the big win over Kamaikan. I mean, they forced like 3 turnovers on the first like 3 plays of the game. It was wild. But Chiawana is a really good team. I'm excited to see what they can do coming up in the next few weeks. Yeah, Richland, Gonzaga Prep. I just got some really good football coming out of the east side of the state this year in the top levels.
Well, I feel pretty good about our lists, about where we're at. Those are non-computer rankings, by the way.
Non-computer, exactly, from this brain.
Absolutely, with virtually no data to pull from, by the way, too. Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, I wish we had like some really cool transition, video or something like that. Now it's time to pick 6, and something like that. So, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick 6. Matt, just so you know, Matt and I exchanged, he gave me a list of some games and said, hey, just pick 6 out of this right here. Don't tell me what we're doing. And I'll just pick him, so you'll get my real raw reaction here. Okay. So, leading off, game number 1, the Orting Cardinals at the Fife Trojans, a pair of 2-0 teams. We talked about Fife a couple of times, and we teased that they have a big game coming up this week. And Orting was a team that was quarterfinal last year, played Anacortes and lost, but they reload with a good running back and a good running game led by Carson McCall. Fife in this one here, the home team. And I will yield to Mr. Evans rankings himself to pick game number 1.
As much as I like what Fife has done offensively this year, I am still on board with Orting as one of the best defenses in 2A. Orting gave up 14 points to Kings. Kings is just they're always loaded offensively, and Orting only gave up 7 points to Bremerton, who was a surprise playoff team last year. I'm going Orting in this game over Fife.
I hate being boring and agreeing, but I definitely think Orting is the more seasoned team, having gained some really crucial experience last year playing the eventual state champions in Anacortes, starting off the year with a couple of quality wins. You mentioned Kings, a very good program over the last few seasons in 1A. I feel really good about Orting. Would not be totally surprised to see Fife pick up a win here. I'm not going to play that way, but I do think Orting is about a 10-point victory here in this one.
That's what I was going to say. 10 to 14.
That's where I'm at. Game number 2, Matt. The Crusaders of Northwest Christian Colbert on the road, taking on the Freeman Scotties, the new Freeman Scotties in the 2B ranks. Not sure where the favor meter should lie in this one, but I got to tell you, man, this one has a pick'em written all over it. I mean, I'd have a hard time moving the needle 3 points for either team. I suppose that Freeman being at home moves the needle a little bit closer to them. So I'm going to ride with the home team in this one, a very close game. Hate to pick against Coach Marshall Hart's crew, so I'm very sorry, Coach. Thanks for watching. Put it up on the bulletin board. I know that it won't matter, but I'm going Freeman in a very, very, very close game here, like 27-24.
I like that pick. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I like it. I think same with you. I think that this game definitely has pick'em all over it. I think that it's going to come down to who makes less mistakes. And I think just based on, and the other thing too is you can't even go with who has more state experience because both teams have made deep state runs the last few years. But I'm going to go with Northwest Christian Colbert in this one.
Okay. So we're split opposite 1-1 here. Moving on to game number 3 on the docket. Okanagan at 2-0 at Linden Christian. It's a 2B 1A matchup. Last year doesn't matter, Matt, but last year Linden Christian took on Napavine in a non-league game. and it was not close. Linden Christian took care of business. I had that going through my mind when I picked this game, but we're going to go to you here to pick first, and we'll see if we line up.
That's a tough one. That's really a tough one because, oh man. I think I'm going to go with Linden Christian in this game. I think that I think Okanagan is talented. I think they're very talented. I think that their game probably does travel, but that's a long ride from Okanagan up to Linden, going over, going down through Leavenworth, going up Highway 2, going back that way. That's going to be a long bus drive. And I think that Linden Christian, I don't think they expected to lose to Vancouver College. I think that they, last week going to North Kitsap, getting getting a win on a good bonding trip right there, despite it being, a close one. I'm leaning Linden Christian. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the win over Napavine last year. I think it's maybe going to be in that 10 to 14 point range, but yeah, I'm going to go Linden Christian.
Well, I hate to agree with you, but I put a lot of stock in how things turned out last season. It was a very close game between Napavine and Okanagan in that state championship game. And Linden Christian beating North Kitsap is a very impressive play-up game. And I think that if you add all the elements that you already said, I just think it makes for a real tough game to go on the road and win. And Okanagan has had a pretty good winning streak going over the last season and a half or so. And, I think it comes to an end right now, and we'll go Linden Christian in this one. Boring. All right. This is more your neck of the woods here, Matt. But game number 4 on our pick 6, Elmira, Cooley, and Heartline at 2-0. They take on the new anointed number 1 by pretty much everybody, Liberty Christian at 2-0. This one is on the road. I'm going with the momentum here. I'm going to go Liberty Christian. I think that if you're beating a team like Neah Bay by 30-plus points and forcing, you said 5 turnovers in that game, I think it's a tough hill to climb for Elmira, Cooley, and Heartline, but a game that could garner both of them some really good experience before we get to the postseason later on.
Yeah, this game is going to come down to the turnovers. I think if Liberty Christian needs to keep Elmira, Cooley, Heartline off the field, because Elmira, Cooley, Heartline wants to come out, they want to drain the clock, they want to have possessions. They have. I mean, I've been watching. It feels like I've been watching their quarterback and their running back play since like 1972. They've seemed like they've been there forever, but they have some really talented players on their squad. And it's going to come down to who makes less mistakes in this one. And I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go with Liberty Christian. And we'll see. I'll be there on Friday night. Looking forward to a great 8-man game. And yeah, let's see how it goes.
All right. So 3 agree and 1 opposite. Game number 5. The Tumwater Thunderbirds at 2-0 at the Eastlake Wolves 1-1. It's a 2A versus 4A crossover. This time, Tumwater takes their dominant wing tee on the road, going up against a very tough King Code team. What say you on this one here, Matt?
I think you got to ride with the hot team. I'm going Tumwater.
Yeah, one thing that factored into my decision here is the loss of Eastlake's starting quarterback here in this game. And had that been in place, I would have picked Eastlake. I told you before the show I have this rule. I have to pick Eastlake. Well, guess what, Matt? Rules are meant to be broken. Tumwater on the road.
You hear that, Sammamish Plateau. Keep an eye out for N2 Media and make sure to tar and feather him when he gets up there.
Yes, absolutely. Excited for the tarring and feathering. All right, game number 6 of the pick 6. The Camas Papermakers at the Lincoln Tacoma Apes. I'm really excited about this one here. Not a crossroad game by either stretch, but these teams have met the last couple of seasons. and Camus has gotten the better of Lincoln. So we'll see how it goes this time. And I'm going to go on the road team here, and I'm going to take Camus again. I think defense will travel very well, and I think the quarterback Davidson will make enough plays to lead his team to victory. But a good opportunity here for Lincoln. They continue to play just an absolutely brutal schedule to start the year.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about Lincoln. It's just like in Camas and Tumwater and all those schools are just like, you know what? We don't want to play nobodies. We want to We want to make sure that our guys are ready for the playoffs. You know, I've had numerous coaches this year when we're trying to fill games with cancellations. They're like, you know, I'm like, maybe shouldn't go after that one. Like, no. Give me their number. We want to schedule our guys tough. You know, I respect that. The seating committee respects that. I'm gonna go with Camus in this one as well. I love Lincoln. I do. I think that Camus is one of the teams that if they're gonna be able to shut down Lincoln's quarterback, it's gonna be these guys are gonna know how to do it. They'll put the blueprint out there. I think it's gonna be a closer game than anybody expects, but yeah, I'm going with Camus.
Well, that is the pick six. But wait, Matt, we're going to go for two. Oh, my gosh.
Let's go.
We're going for two in the win. Just because we've got 5 each on the same side, I think that we need to add a couple of more here. And off of your list, I like this game here. Kamiakin at Yelm. Kamiakin's got to be in a real salty mood after losing to Chiawana last week, and they're going to go on the road and take on a Tornadoes team that has been tested the first couple of games, but has come back and escaped with some victories. I'm going to yield to you, Mr. Tri-Cities, and tell me why Kamiakin is going to come on the road and win this game maybe.
I think that, in all honesty, if they do win this game, I think that having the game that they had against Chiawana last week, I think that was the best thing that could have happened to them to get prepared for this game. You know, you go through, you make the mistakes. It's us in education. You'll hear it all the time. Have a growth mindset. You'll learn from your mistakes. You know, they've gone through and they made a bunch of mistakes. They're going to learn from it. Coach Bigland's going to be hammering it into them to just, to make sure that they are ready to go. On top of it, it's a no school day on Friday. They're going to have all day to travel up there, get themselves ready, rested, prepared. It's hard for me to pick Kamiakin in this game because I think it's going to be close, but I think Yelm's a better team. It's hard for me to pick Yelm because I also do work at a Kamiakin feeder school. I know a lot of siblings of players that go to my school that are my students. Then a lot of the players were past students of mine. And so it's hard for me to pick against them, but yeah, I'm going to have to go with Yelm in this game.
Well, just for the sake of being the contrarian, which I like to be, listen, I love the get blown out mentality and then take a long road trip. I mean, you want to talk about team bonding. There's nothing that you can possibly bond or break over coming off of a big loss to your rivals. And I'm not sure, you'll have to educate me, right? I got my pencil out. I'm ready to write down some notes, but I don't know if Kamiak and Chiawana is a bigger rivalry than, let's say, Kamiak and Kennewick. But, either way, a league opponent comes down to tiebreakers. It comes down to seeding. You can't feel good about a beating like that to a team in Chiawana that you've played very tough over the last few seasons. I think last year's game, did it go to OT or something like that?
It's gone to OT. It's been like one possession every year for the last few years.
In terms of my confidence meter here, I'm at about a 55% confidence meter here for Yelm. For some reason, this game just says, welcome to 4A, and I'm going to go with Kamiakin on the road here, bounce back style. And I think that eventually, playing some of these blue blood teams, over the last few seasons that, Yelm's going to maybe get tripped up once or twice throughout the year. I might regret saying that because I think that Coach Ronquillo does a fantastic job and they've got a great team. And I think that they're going to be good for the entire year. I just think this week we're going to see a real close battle, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Kamiakin pick it up.
The thing that if you're going to be, whoever's watching this game, if you're up there or if you're watching on NFHS, keep an eye on early pressure from Yelm on Kamaikin's quarterback. Kamaikin's quarterback is a 2-3 year starter, but he is prone to mistakes, especially if you put him under pressure. It would not be surprising to me to see Yelm come out and put pressure on him early to try to force some of those mistakes. And that could be, if they can do that, then it could be a long night for Kamaikin.
And then since we're going for two, our last and final game, Squalicum at Archbishop Murphy, a pair of 2-0 teams. And I kind of felt like it was not doing any of these teams a service by leaving them off of the pick six here today, because this is a close game. And this game right here, to me, Matt, said, okay, we're looking at third place maybe or fourth place maybe, right? Realistically, by the time the season ends. Not saying that either one of these teams doesn't have what it takes to maybe trip up a Linden or an Anacortes, but that looks like a tall mountain to climb. This game has got to be circled for both of these squads when it comes to league play in terms of where they end up at the final standings tally once we get to week 9. Squalicum's a team that I think has developed athletes tremendously over the last couple of years, and Archbishop has been on that steady incline. And I like where the incline is going here for Archbishop. I think that Archbishop is going to win a close one here, probably 24-20.
Yep, I agree with you. I would go Archbishop Murphy as well. Like you said, this game, the games that involve Seaholm and Maryfield Pilchuck as well, all of those games are going to be huge between those four to see who gets those bids. And I think I project that there's going to be 4 out of Northwest going in. I got it up here. Let me take a look at it real quick. I project 4 going in from the Northwest Conference. So all of these games between those non-Anacortes Linden in that second tier are going to be massive. Yeah, I mean, you throw Seaholm back into the mix too. I mean, albeit against Anacortes 35-7, but that's nothing to be too upset about. I think that they still got plenty of athletes on the team, and those 5 teams are going to battle it out all year between Archbishop, Squalicum, Seaholm, and then Linden and Anacortes. So, and then Pilchuck, I mean, even at 0-2, they're a team that can pick up a couple of victories very easily in Northwest 2A. So that's going to be a crazy division, as it always is. But if you're getting 4 teams out of that division into week 10 games, that's tough. That's tough for anybody. Imagine being a first place GSL team, or a first place GSHL team, and you're taking on 4th place Squalicum, 4th place Archbishop Murphy. Good luck. That's going to be a nightmare matchup for somebody. Absolutely agreed. I think I'm very happy to see the top 4 classifications going all to the week 10 crossovers. I think that it's absolutely the best thing that they could have done. We're getting more teams to state or to into the playoffs, more meaningful games late, and it's more work for me to do. So it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, hey, speaking of the work you do, we all greatly appreciate the work that you do. Me, of course, very much excited to be doing a podcast with you. Do a great job getting everybody kind of educated as to what the landscape is according to both human and computer. But just the spreadsheet, when I was going over everything, my wife came by and she goes, "Did you make that?" I'm like, "I am not capable of making something like this." I was like, "There's absolutely no way." She's like, "Well, who did it?" I'm like, "Matt did it." She's like, "Oh my gosh, that must have taken a lot of work." I'm like, "You have no idea how much work this guy puts into doing this." So greatly appreciate it, Matt.
I do it for the kids, man. Do it for just the discussion, and just it's why we do what we do. We want to make sure that we're getting eyes and exposure on our athletes, and project them in, just showcase their talents and get people talking about them. That's what it's all about. And it's one of the reasons why I love working with you and promoting your stuff and making sure that we're, you're doing the right stuff down there and in the Southwest area. And, we've got some fantastic media members around the state that do awesome work. And, we are thankfully, we have a similar mindset if we want to try to make sure that we work together along with everybody else to make sure that we're making things better for everybody. And it's just, it's a great little platform we have here, and I'm happy to be able to do what I can to help with the state of Washington.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is to mention as many kids in as many schools as possible. If we didn't mention your team tonight in a positive light, well, sorry about that. But we try to best we can, and yeah, look forward to another show coming up here. Hopefully next week, carve out at least an hour to review what happened on week number three. Week number 3. We skipped a week. But man, yeah, no, I want to see the stories. I want to see the teams that come out of nowhere. You know, I want teams, if you feel like you're, you know, being overlooked, being slighted, I want to know why, and I want to have the eyes and the attention drawn to you. And I think that this week's slate of games for a week 3 is really spoiling football fans around the state of Washington.
Absolutely.
I really can't wait to see what some of these results will yield. A game that we didn't mention that caught my attention. Maybe you mentioned it, but it was the team that was playing West Lynn. I don't have it off the top of my head. Was that Sumner?
Sumner, yeah.
Yeah, that game. Oh man, like obviously, you know, we're both going to pick Washington, you know, to win the game, you know, or at least maybe root for them to win the game. But I think West Lynn is like one of the more dominant teams, you know, over the last few years. Them, Central Catholic, you know, out of the state of Oregon. So that's a game that, you know, both states should be really excited to see.
If I remember correctly, I think West Lynn's coached by Camus's old coach.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, John Engel, right? I think that's who it is. Yeah.
Yep. Should be a good game. Yeah, there's a lot of games that are super excited. This week I get a chance to go down and stream Hawkinson at Ridgefield. So Greater St. Helens 2A will start off this week, and I get a chance to go down and visit the Hot Potato. One of my favorite places to go to, like top notch. Athletic director, fantastic. Always has a QR code of the live stream link for everybody when they walk through the gate.
Awesome.
Just a great atmosphere all around. And Mark Morris and Columbia River, they were originally supposed to be playing their game on the road, but they had it switched. You might know about that because you know everything. But it's actually in Longview this now. So
okay. Nice.
Columbia River at Mark Morris. So they'll be missing me this week. So, you know, I'm not abandoning you, but the schedule when it first came out was down in Kiggins So I made plans to go down to Ridgefield, and I'm not canceling them. So that's where we're at. Any final thoughts or anything to farewell on that before we get out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. First of all, shout out to all the ADs out there. They are athletic. You mentioned, you know, an amazing AD down there. The athletic directors do so much more than so much behind the scenes, and all of their work is appreciated by us. They're fantastic folks who just work their butts off. And finally, my last thing, just a note for all football teams. Remember, if you are on 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, put your unathletic quarterback in and go speed option to the right. Clearly, that's the best call for any time.
Yeah. I guess I have a final thought as well. Listen, if you're gonna lose a game, right? Which, by the way, shout out Matt King, right? Matt, if you've hopped on, if you've hopped on at all, I know you're doing a soccer game tonight. Bless your heart, but I tell you what. Just like Matt said, like if you're running a play like that, that means that you don't know who you are. You don't know what you are, right? Like when the Seahawks did their thing at the 1 yard line, right? We knew who they were, right? We knew it. We knew that they were. That's what made it so like abysmal that they would even throw the ball. But you have to know what your identity is in a game, in a situation. When you're 4th and goal, game on the line, and you're down, like you run your absolute best play, not a play that you haven't ran, right? You run your absolute best play, your go-to. And if you lose, Matt. That's the end of it. It doesn't matter. But you don't put Will Rogers in a speed option situation. I mean, if you're going to run that play, at least swap in Williams, you know, a guy who has legs, but still it's unbelievable on that being your play call. What do you think? You're going to catch him off guard?
Well, and the other thing too that got me, I've been playing way too much CFB 25 lately because I saw the formation come out, and you know, I've heard from the coaching staff that they saw that they had numbers to the right hand side. I saw trips receivers to the left in single coverage. I'm like, why aren't you running the outside guys on slants in and running the inside guy on a slant out and fading to the corner? I'm like, why is that not the option right there with your
Anything,
quarterback who's thrown for 12,000 freaking yards at Mississippi State?
right?
Yeah. So
Anything.
Yep.
Be you. Be your identity. And Coleman is a guy who has low center of gravity, who could usually win on first contact. I would give him the ball, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 of those times on that play. But it wouldn't be via speed option. I mean, I'm telling you right now, the Tumwater Thunderbirds, right, could have taken the entire field. They could have put their best 11 guys out there in that situation. I know what their identity is. They're going to freaking score that ball. They're going to run that ball, and they're going to score. I don't know what the hell the Huskies were thinking in that situation. By the way, I want to end on this note. I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, right? Washington State Cougar fans, congratulations.
Yes.
You deserve it.
100% agreed.
I have no problem with Washington State winning the football game, having their athletic director leave them to go to Washington. I am not one of these Washington guys that's just like, oh, hate the Cougars. It's like, nope, congratulations. You deserve it. You won. Go out and win a Mountain West title or whatever it is you are.
Yep, I'm the exact same way. I root for the Cougs when they're not playing the Huskies, and they've been talking about maybe we take the trophy back to Pullman and bring a new one next year. I say do it. Honestly, with everything that they've gone through, I would have no problem if they decided to do it. They absolutely deserve it. They absolutely earn it. Jake Dickert is he's a gem of a coach, and I hope he stays there for a long time because I think the thing that really got me, as someone who doesn't necessarily, who roots for the Dogs, just seeing all of my Coug friends towards the end of that, or even in the middle of that game, that are just tweeting and like texting me like, dude, I'd run through a wall for that dude. Mm-hmm. Like that's how I felt about Coach Pete, Coach Peterson, man. I would have, I'd have run through a wall for that dude. And, it's special when you find those coaches. And you know what? Right now, I'm going to say it. Go Cougs, man. Go win the Mountain West. Get yourself in the playoff. Let's go. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I think that they got a winnable path to get there as long as they don't Coug it, which is the term. Yeah.
Oh.
Which is the popular phrase. Hey, I'm telling you what, though. I got off work and my wife goes, I thought that we were going to Coug it because she's a Washington State alumni, So I was like, yeah, well, guess what? It was the Huskies that Couged it this time.
We dogged it.
You dogged it. Yeah, totally, man. All right. Well, these guys right here are making me happy, and I can't wait to catch up with them coming up on Sunday when they take on the Tua Tagovailoa Miami Dolphins. Sad, but don't put yourself in harm's way when you've had 6 concussions already. Me counting college and professional. But man, yeah, excited for the football in the Northwest. And we'll see if we can reconvene coming up here sooner rather than later. Sundays have been pretty busy for me. But yeah, I appreciate everyone coming in and watching the show. I saw a comment earlier on YouTube about can I get this in podcast form? Well, you can if I can figure out how to make it.
Podcast form. That sounds good. I'll have to bust out the old radio announcer voice. Yeah, I think 2B, we're going to go on Alaska with the number 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think that me and Jordan Nalen, as all of you know him as on Twitter. But yeah, he's coming up with a great new coverage business here, kind of like the Daily News. Obviously, that's where he was formerly employed, a place we don't talk about anymore. But Blast Zone Media, look for it. Blast Zone Media will be starting soon. Jody Nalen will be affiliating with a few people, including myself, and we're going to be doing some local power rankings, and we're going to be doing some local pound-for-pound rankings, and also just providing as much prep coverage as possible, football, volleyball, soccer, fall sports, and beyond, and looking forward to getting some more insight from him. So check out our website here in a little while. We'll have some more articles up and probably have some previews up for this week as well. So, all right, buddy.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks everybody for watching the show. On behalf of my co-host, Matt Evans of Evans Rankings, I am Nick Sisson of N2 Media, saying thank you again so much, and we look to be back here hopefully in a week or so. Have a good night and a great weekend.